We are absolutely delighted to have our reader, Sage Cohen, here with us tonight. Sage is the author of Writing the Life Poetic, an invitation to read and write poetry, 2009. The Productive Writer, Tips and Tools for Writing More, Stressing Less, and Creating Success, which is forthcoming in 2010. And the poetry collection, Like the Heart, the World. Her essay, The Word is the Way, recently appeared alongside President Obama, Al Gore, Thomas Friedman, and other leaders in the anthology, How to Achieve a Heaven on Earth. Sage teaches online class poetry for the people and publishes the Writing the Life Poetic. Her news menagerie includes 3 cats, and I can say just in talking with Sage today, we both have cats, and they both kind of rule our house. 2 dogs, 1 husband, and she says the most precious toddler ever to say duck. Sage has a great website, so learn more about going to her website. Would you join me in welcoming our reader tonight, Sage Cohen. Sage.
Thank you, Tom, so much for making this event possible and for inviting me, and thank you, wow, many of you all for being here tonight. It's really an honor and a delight to be here. Sorry. I was just thinking, I'm writing a book right now called The Productive Writer with tips and strategies for writers about how to write with more ease and publish with more ease and present with more ease. And there's a little section about wardrobe malfunction and how you should dress for a reading. And I discovered as I was in the bathroom here that I was wearing a particularly sort of bathroom unfriendly type of apparel for this reading. So I'm going to take my own wisdom next time and dress a little bit more appropriately. Fortunately, I made it out okay. So I'm going to read mostly from my book, Like the Heart, the World, and it spans about 13 years of time and 3 different cities and 3 different ways of life. And I've mixed in a couple poems that don't appear in the book. But the trajectory is from New York City to San Francisco to Portland. And New York City began in 1994, and some of the poems in that section were written then and finished then in that chapter of life, and some have taken until now to complete. And I want to say also that the poems in each section were the process of writing them was very different in each location. In New York City, I walked around everywhere with a little tape recorder and sort of whispered things, observations to myself, looking very goofy. So a lot of those poems sort of happen on the streets and have a different sort of movement kind of feeling. And a lot of the San Francisco poems were written sitting in cafes in my pajamas, doing free writing while listening to live music. And then the Portland poems often happen hiking with dogs or in the bathtub. So, enough said. Going home, and we're in New York now. My nails are red today. I did them for the wedding. When I meet my neighbor Ryan in the elevator with his blue dog, Chachi, I think, this is strange. Me in my pink outfit, pink suitcases, his dog dyed blue. He moved in yesterday. I'm leaving for the summer. We shake our left hands. Lefties, he says, nodding his head gravely. My mother is a lefty too. She's carrying 2 suitcases in a plastic bag. Her neck hurts. 3 lefties and a blue dog in an elevator going down. Generally, I don't trust large men with small dogs, but this guy's got an okay handshake, so I don't know. This poem, the title is also the first line. It's titled Dear Sam. When I squint my eyes, I can make your hair a single star, points breaking around your head, winter breaking inside of me, a cape of discarded color at my feet. I talk the dirt out of my mouth. I am no expert. I shine my dim light, and you're out there breaking glass. I filled a whole notebook with you once, but still you were missing. There are pink stars on the red Formica table. The mattress a pulse of argument. Next year, New York will be different. But tonight, the moon is a white spine, and a small candle burns our shadows into the wall. Tried to select a mix of poems that are most readable and also ones that I don't read too frequently. And this next poem is called Thirst. We understand least what we hold closest. Cup contains, water resists. Thirst, a lineage of cups with no trust in the future. What wakes you up in the night, mouth empty, sheets blank, might be the faucet's dumb neck, arched with a brassy assurance that you have not yet learned to tap. And my friend Sean really likes this poem, which is why I'm reading it. He's hosting a reading series in Vancouver tonight, but this one's for Sean. It's called Pretty Lady, Can I Get a Smile? I was busy setting myself on fire when the truck came. Pretty lady, pretty lady. A small boy in a blue hood misses a ball that is thrown to him. A woman sitting on the fountain looks like she's been stunned into her business suit, a briefcase thrust into her hand at the last moment, as if on cue for something. I got stuck in the middle with the birds and the pacing men. Pretty lady, can I get a smile? Maybe I should let the woman in the Superman shirt with no hair take me home while she searches for the right adjective to repair her marriage. I hid everything you could find fault with in the back. I like to walk on wounds and wave to strangers and count birds. Your geography is impressive. Do you know where your heart is? I get this idea that nighttime will protect me and curl my hands into little hearts against my face. And this poem also, the title is the first line. Can you hear me okay, Claire? Okay. God says to my father, I don't judge you, so why do you judge yourself? My father sits smoking in his black sports car, sits shrugging butterflies off his suntanned arm, calling them moths. And Pauline says she likes this one, so this one's for Pauline. It's called Uptown on the One. I sit in a shiny orange seat, clutching Tess Gallagher's Portable Kisses. I had hoped to find some kind of explanation for what happens in love. The train lurches forward toward its predetermined destination. On my hand, a tattoo that says Jane and Craig forever. It will fade, as all promises do, with a few washings. The man standing over me, holding his umbrella, stares down into the darkness where my hair parts. His ring and briefcase suggest that he is between wife and work. I write this down, a faith of naming. I am headed to 107th Street, where Shari lives, where her twins live inside Shari, unfurling like fern tips into the light. I wonder if they reach for each other from across their dim and distant sacks, if they are warming up to the idea of being born. No one sits down to my left. There is too much of me there. He is a pastor, not a priest, says the girl to the man. They are leaning together. I would like to belong somewhere. Instead, I am traveling between two apartments that are not my home. Thank you. Okay. San Francisco. And this poem is the title poem of the book. It's called Like the Heart, the World. Like the heart, the world expands and contracts. We stand at the edge where continent and ocean overlap. It is hard to know how to let go. Cloud carries pink like paint carries pigment. Each word, too, enmeshed in the web of idea. I walk with Amy along the beach. The night blows its pinks in from the north. As the sun sinks behind the furthest line of ocean, the pinks settle into the deepening distance like a shucked skirt slipped to the floor. We walk into the wind. Amy wears her mother's sweater. It is not warm. It has a tissue in the pocket where one might presume her mother expected to retrieve it. We change direction, and now the wind penetrates our backs like an old mistake that still aches. The pinks are contagious. I want to surrender myself here. Let the flat mirror of beach break me. Amy says it's the negative ions that feed us what we need, make us exalted. But I think it's the way absence echoes back at us from the endless possibility of ocean. Amy lifts her arms up over her head into the night. Not prayer, not flight, an opening. She calls to her mother. In this sky that includes beach and city, past and present, dead and living, pink is the language through which Amy's mother answers. This poem chokes me up every time I read it, and I've read it for so many years. Not because she has been called, but because mothers will travel any distance to see their daughters happy. The other tip I suggested was tissues, which I also don't have here with me. Impressive, thank you. Do as I say, not as I do. Thank you. Thank you. We stand with our backs to the city, cloaked in the ocean's turbulent quiet. There is a stillness, a kind of reverence among the pinks as they settle in among the night's deeper darknesses. We leave the beach and walk into the night as the final scarves of light flare up and burn out. Sorry, folks. Retrospective. It is too soon for clarity, too late for truth. You want to remember him as someone you loved. You move your body to keep it alive while the man ahead of you gets his brownie heated. To go, to stay. The deception lives in increments between choice and action. You are not who you were then. You are not who you say you are. You can't breathe, so you breathe. You need music and antibiotics and whatever will make the facts more round. The doctor says, yes, you must try, but he is only practiced in the patterns of people. The world has its own memory, whose entrances are curtained, whose departures, like opera, are holy and misunderstood. So this next one is short and a little bit dense. I'm going to read it a little slower. And the title is also the first line. It's called My Only Regret. My only regret, said Eve, composed of the bones of the man she was born to receive, is that before me came the feast of garden, where understanding cost us taste, where shape wept for the memory of a man who was once complete, as I wore the bones that bore me without making them my own. So this is, as you may gather, sort of the collection of disappointment and love poems spanning a wide arc. And here's another. It's called The Irony of the Small Horn. Paul says the Great American Music Hall should be called the Great European Music Hall. Its gold flourishes and imperial balcony feel more like something you'd yearn for from across an ocean. Nothing is named right in this world. I don't know what to call Paul's body against mine. Dancing, maybe, but that's not enough. It's more like a question before it is born, gathering force among the margins of what is already known or believed. Paul has his hand on my stomach where my shirt rides up, and I press into the beat coming through his chest. My hips rotate with the room. Singular surrenders to plural, sweat and smoke and beer and bodies pulse in the darkness. The music is a fire. Dancing is the flame. We all depend on each other to burn. Paul points out the enormous man playing the tiny trumpet. All the big guys have small horns, we agree. This poem was supposed to be about that, about the trumpet, because that's how Paul and I planned it. But nothing ever turns out the way you think it will. The music ends, and then it's time to go home. So I told this story recently about this next poem. I'll tell it again if few of you have heard it. In the tarot deck, there is a card called the Queen of Wands, which is the one that wants me for some reason. And it's a card of transformation, and the story, very roughly, of this particular card is a queen sort of transforms 3 times into 3 different selves, and with each transformation, her hair changes color and her companion animal changes. And when she goes through the 3rd transformation, she can't take her, I believe it's say here, leopard, so that she can't take the leopard with her. The animal stays behind sort of as the place marker for where she once was, and she has to go through the final transformation alone. So this is a poem about my relationship with that card. It's called Queen of Wands. Calling our beasts by their proper names means letting go of hope and its long-distance ecstasies. Each rightful companion has her own ending place. Grief, the graveyard of names. In the open space, exchange. I lost panther to gain leopard. My hair let go of its color, and as I let go of my pain, even my leopard started thinking she was someone else. But I needed her more as witness than companion. Her spots, the doors now closed to me, paths complete. Though she yearns, my leopard is too previous to become lion. She waits for me on the shore, sends her selves in circles out along the smooth surface of my life. Each day I drag her darkness forward. Two more poems and we exit San Francisco. Where Besson Street and Chevron Don't Meet. I was gifted with zero sense of direction, which somebody very kindly told me was because my heart was leading, which is interesting. My heart is a nice place, but it doesn't follow maps very well. So, enough said. Where Besson Street and Chevron Don't Meet. I am an unmarried woman. My eyes fit together like a door closing on an old life. See how the river runs under me, the dog sleeps to my left. I can't tell you how to get here because I don't know myself or which way you're coming. I drive the neatly drawn line of Route 97. Division Street divides us. The difference between losing one's maidenhood and losing one's mind. Ceremony. The river comes in stages, like death. Each day the sky wavers, streaked along the bottom of things. I curl to fit you, but you are too long. I let you sleep alone with your face toward the river. The trees wear a heavy fur of snow. I wish I knew how to receive what is provided. There are only alternatives, back roads that refuse the heavy grip of tires, and kisses that heap themselves like snow. By morning, we are exhausted with the weight. And this next poem, many of you may be holding. This is the broadside, called Alchemy. Consequence and its heavy metals strive toward transformation, while imprecisely a silent pine resonates with lake. Among the assurances of proximity and place, she floats out, weightless, over the lake's flat gaze. Heavy arms repeated and relieved. Birds shape themselves to wind. The trees shift, shimmering as snow sifts its silences. Shadows send their slender semi-selves out like wishes that have not yet learned to lift. I sit doubled beside the pine. A woman pleads with me from within the lake, leave. Listening to her is like eating a peach right down to the pit. Everything green folds to gold and starts again. Leaden is the death that does not find its way forward. Harmony must first have been an opposition that stumbled into agreement, slightly above the departure. We are in Portland now. And this next poem, so here's another say as I do as I say, not as I do. I accidentally submitted this poem at the same time to 2 contests, which, as we know, you're not supposed to do that. And it won first prize in both contests in the same week, and it was incredibly embarrassing and humiliating to have to say, "Oops, oops, I sent it." I mean, what are the chances? So I guess two publications think this is a nice poem. It's called Algorithm. And I usually don't read it because it's hard to read, but it's not narrative, but Algorithm. Gravity borrows her name from the bird who stopped trying. He said the poem was a hinge, that a bird fell into her womb from the well. There is no law that can convince me otherwise. Call in the scientists if you must, and name their theories after themselves. Our entire lives, after all, comprise the world looking back at us from beyond our reach and saying, "This is who you are." Names the place markers of what was last believed possible. The dead tree leaps across the water, free of root. I'm building up a tolerance for the absence of proof. Maybe there is some straight line somewhere confining us to the literal. But I saw the bird's fear as something useful, her blindness a kind of guidance. And this next poem was blessed by the kind women of Voice Catcher. It's appeared in Voice Catcher. It's called Apology. The dogs have followed me downstairs like heartbreak. Sadness is our habit. I cannot find kindness on the shelves. I have no recipe, only eggs and butter and faith. There is no saving grace, no blame, no place of rest. Until I trust the sun to its own descent, forgiveness breaks me down to dust, the waves carry me out over the years I listened to you leaving me, the sound of it trapped in my ocean ear as the conch curls her tidal heart against the thin shimmering of moon's cinematic grief. This next poem has a good story. I'll read the poem first. I'll tell the story. It's called Bai Hua. Somebody asked me if I had a Japan poem, and this is a China poem. That's as close as I'm going to get, I think, this evening. Bai Hua. There is a child in China. I do not speak her language. She does not speak mine. What I hold are clippings of her life in translation. The day she admitted she had something to say, someone wrote it down. Rice could make the classroom beautiful. She painted what the marker could not sustain, making beauty last. Bai Hua's feet turn in as if she is traveling into herself. In the off-kilter distance, faded in afternoon light, she stands, slightly bent, one arm raised as if she'd just thrown something at the camera, or changed her mind and wanted to erase what was already said. I know the metal taste of alone. I would like to send Bai Hua my own progress report for spring 2004. Sage has learned to ask for the colored rice, it would say, but realized she no longer needed it. She has stopped trying so hard to camouflage her fear. So this poem, I sponsored a child in China for a number of years, and each time I got a report, which was in very sort of fragmented, and I found very poetic, sort of mistranslation, I would write a poem each time, and that was how I sort of digested my very fragile disconnection with this other human being who I couldn't really even begin to imagine. And so I wrote this series of poems, and there was at some point a call from the organization to share writing about they wanted to publish in one of their newsletters writing about whatever our experience was with this organization. So I sent them this poem, and they published it in their newsletter. And a few years later, I received an email from a woman in Ohio who had just adopted Bai Hua. So now I have a relationship with her here. She has a family here, and I get to hear about her life. So, and that was all because of writing a poem and sharing it. It's a funny thing, the internet, and what's possible out there. And I don't know how. I guess somebody in the organization had read the poem and told this adoptive mother about it, and then she sought me out. So maybe someday we'll even meet. Yeah. So I spent many, many years wondering why in the world I would ever want to share a poem, why it would ever travel further than from me to the paper. And that's a really good, it took me a long time to figure out that the idea was to actually connect with other people. And I guess, we all do that when we're ready. There's no hurry, but that was a particularly nice connection. Mm-hmm. I Make You a River. This is a longish prose poem. It's shaped in paragraphs. Philip Levine claims that there was at least one day when Lorca and Crane were in the same place at the same time. His poem is the imagined moment of flint on flint, as the poet's minds converged in a small brush fire of tongue and ash, before each fell forward into his own inevitable future. Stranded in my own moment in time, the electric pulse of poetry charging my clinging sweater, back lined up with the hard bench of listening, I enter the eternity of spring, where Lorca stands stooped, his pockets weighted with unspent poems. Each hard knuckle of bud, containing a great courage of reckless beauty, unfurls itself into words under the spell of my recording pen. Levine says, horse cock and mattress stuffing, a name for a sandwich composed of Wonder Bread and bologna. We can take any experience and make it matter. Put it in a barn or on a train, make it backlit or blast it with headlights. I make you a river, so my love has somewhere to go. I take the word sacred into me and assign it to your mouth, which is echoing my inner ear as the conch holds the ocean. We are blind as a field. I am a maple tree wide a century. Your kiss, the sun pouring through my green. Time rings me in radiance. There is only this moment of enough. Stable as seed, your hands hold all futures. My pollens drift to dust. The little note cards on my knee are preserved petals. Levine claims he hasn't met a poet who rivals Dickinson. We silence our beauty inside the heavy book of past. These cascading evasions we call time and truth, around which we organize our disappearances. Return me to the cross-hatched convergence of afternoon and future. The earth's thirst for metaphor rains you over my listening skin. I breathe you in, then cry you out again. I write you down, so when the river returns, it will know to flow right through me. Trying to decide, I think. I'll read, just break it up a little bit, a little snippet, a little prose snippet from Writing the Life Poetic. And I think I'm going to do the one that poor Constance and Steve have heard quite a few times. The chapters generally start with, there are 80 short chapters, and each one starts with a little sort of lesson or contemplation or consideration of some craft or lifestyle topic of the life poetic. And this chapter is called To Thine Own Self Be True, and a little contemplation of words. Ren was a massage practitioner treating my dog Hamachi for back pain. He had paw prints tattooed around his wrists and Pat Benatar's name running up the inside of his forearm. The first time he came to my house, I found myself singing for the rest of the day in my most macho rocker girl swagger. Well, you can cry tough, baby, it's all right. You can let me down easy, but not tonight. Ren's second visit inspired. Before I put another notch in my lipstick case, you better make sure you put me in my place. I see all of you Pat Benatar fans like, yeah. Oh, I know who you are. Fire and ice, of course, was simply inevitable. On his third visit, I asked Ren, how has it impacted your life to have Pat Benatar's name on your body? He was sitting on the floor with Hamachi in his lap. She was upside down, spread eagle, licking his wrists. He was working on softening the fascia of her belly that connects to the spine. He lit up. Pat Benatar is my talisman, Ren explained. Her name on my arm is a daily reminder of who I am and how I want to live. I go into people's homes and they see her name on my arm, and they're reminded of who they are and how they want to live. It gets us talking about what matters to us. I am intrigued by this idea of taking the name or idea or embodiment of someone or something else literally into our skin. Living alongside your life, these words perhaps provide a kind of parallel perception, a harmony playing counterpart to the main melody of your form and function, an aspiration or value to which you have assigned yourself, against which the beating of your own heart aligns or collides. I have never been certain enough about the longevity of any word, phrase, or belief to tattoo it onto my body. However, I did wear a necklace pendant for maybe 3 years straight that said, "To thine own self be true." I like to think of that necklace having powers akin to Wonder Woman's groovy metal bracelets, deflecting all that might steer me off the course of my greater good. And I'm absolutely convinced that those words worked. Over my desk hangs a framed piece of art that my mother gave me maybe 20 years ago that has been held close in every home since. It reads, "The act of writing is the art of discovering what you believe," by David Hare. Magnetized to the whiteboard I use to track my deadlines are 2 SART cards that my friend Pam sent me. One reads, "Breathe," and the other, "All your dreams are already coming true." Again, none of these are imprinted in my skin, but all are a part of my daily visual cues as I look up to seek poems from that vast diaphanous place above my head where they materialize. Words can be like arrows, focusing your attention in certain directions, and they can be like steering wheels, literally influencing the choices you make and the actions you take. I encourage you to think and feel carefully about the words you keep close, on your body where you sleep, work, and live. Sooner or later, the words you see will become a part of your framework of belief. If Pat Benatar are the 2 words you need to keep in sight to remind you of your true north, then by all means, become one with a legendary rocker. Whatever it is you believe or you'd like to believe, experiment with letting words be the current that can keep your circuits juiced with your own truth. Okay. Do a few more poems and then say goodnight. Nagoon berries. The thorn bush holds her secrets low to the ground. In the privacy of rain, we kneel together, heads bent to the berries. Lush with leaf and hush, our voices settle like fog among the unspoken as we stain and bruise ourselves with fruit. The earth drinks and drinks until it spills open and raw, like a prayer book saturated with God's desire for humanity. We are a rhythm of choosing, crawling along the bloated field through necklaces of vine. The berries fall wide-eyed into our collecting cup. You carry that tender burden of severed fruit home. You stand over the stove, cooking sacrifice down to sugar. Divine proportion. All life divides to 0.618. I feed you the sum of my breasts, each floret, aggregates past, ribs the formula of your seeking. We spiral toward proportion, splicing time into the infinite stability of increments. Your breath, my measurement, as seed dreams forest, you could build a world on these breasts, whose effort should not show the imposing form of the absolute. Never read that one live. The waitress kneels to place Theo's fallen shoe on his foot with the care of a courtier. As she speaks his name, both faces break from bud to blossom. She tells him, there are buildings like this everywhere, with women like me in them. I have been eating pink and white and red peanut M&Ms made for Valentine's Day and sold at a post-romantic discount. I know that once we reach a certain age, faces no longer open. I press the cut flower of this promise to my chest, clutch the menu, quietly say into the space where I just asked for pancakes. May my son always feel welcomed, simply for walking into a restaurant, sitting down, dropping his shoe. Two more small ones. So as I got happier and happier in Portland, my poems got smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, whew, life is good. Let's move on. Barn. Throw your shoulder into the weight of door. Lay down your human condition. Roll in the sweet hay of horse secrets. Feast on the nothing you know. Last poem. It's called Payati Stone. Let this moment be enough. Ownership cannot survive its illusions. Beyond the fence dividing wrong from right shines the simple stone of gratitude, the ripening of earth, the mind grown quiet with time. Thank you. Thank you. Is it? Do you want me to-
Questions?
I would be happy to answer questions if anyone has any. Yes.
I've asked this before, but I didn't understand the answer. What's the difference between poetry and prose? Because you had both. Is that too big of a question?
Let's talk about it after. I guess what I would.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, what's the difference between poetry and prose? I'm curious what your experience was of the difference between poetry and prose, how they landed for you.
I've written a poem,
Uh-huh.
and to me it's obviously a poem, but mostly I write prose, but sometimes it's poetic, but it's not written like a poem, it's just inserted, you know, there may be a paragraph, I usually just write a couple of paragraphs a day, and somewhere in the mundaneness that I'm chronicling, there's a little bit of wisdom, but I don't necessarily think it's poetry, but maybe sometimes prose is a little bit poetic, or,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Prose is often quite poetic.
prose is.
I think, poetry, when writing a poem, there's attention to certain craft elements, what the shape of the poem is. There are prose poems, but for the most part, what the shape of where the line breaks, how to be as efficient and economic with language as possible. Really focusing on the work that images are doing and sound is doing to move a poem forward. So there's certain craft considerations that go into the composition of a poem. Those things also may translate to prose, but the shape of the stanza and the movement of the line is one of the primary distinguishing craft elements
So you
of a
could like go
poem.
take a class in poetry and kind of learn those things.
Yes, you can. You should, is that something you'll be talking about in your class in a few weeks? Everyone in this room, Paul-Ann Peterson is right over here, and she is the person that you should
Oh, okay.
study with as soon as you can. Yes,
Talking about craft,
yes.
what's your writing practice? When do you write and how often?
Oh, it's well, in this chapter of life, I have different types. I write for a living. I write marketing copy for businesses, and I'm writing a book, and I try to do my other creative writing. So, a lot of people have a rhythm where they wake up and that's their time. My creative time is between 4 p.m. and midnight. And I've figured that out along the way, which doesn't do wonders for my social life. But but that tends to be my most receptive time to poetry. So earlier in the day tends to be when I do my kind of strategic business writing. And then book writing and poetry writing shares the margins. But fortunately, the margins that I have kind of work with my rhythm.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you were strongly influenced by either the climate or the landscape of each of these places where you have lived?
Yeah, definitely. The climate, the landscape, and I think the way that I lived, the way I move around and what I was doing in my life. Then being on foot in New York City is a really unique type of experience, and it puts you right up against other people. I mean, I literally I moved to back to San Francisco after and couldn't believe that I could walk down the street and not be sort of jostled around by people everywhere. So definitely the social and physical context of each place, and for me, made a difference in how I wrote and what I was writing. And also the stage in life. Anything else? Yes.
So say that you do your business writing during the day,
Uh-huh.
and you do your creative writing starting about 4 o'clock to midnight. What do you do to shut off the business brain and turn on the creative brain? How do you make that transition?
You know, it's I think I've been doing it so long. Like it's not a hard transition for me to make. The business writing, if it's going well, is also really creative. It's not expressing myself, but it's figuring out how to say something in a way that is meaningful. So generally, if I've had a good day doing that, I have a good day with my own work. And one feeds the other. My problem is just shutting it all down and going to sleep. That's a harder issue for me. Because these days I tend to kind of write right up until it's time to sleep, and then that doesn't work very well.
What time does Theo get up?
Theo wakes up at about 6:30 these days. He goes to sleep at 6. And that's his choice. That's what he does. That's what he wants. So, yeah, and that's my reward for the first 14 months being up every 2 to 3 hours around the clock. So a couple months ago, he just kind of kicked into like, yeah, I know how to sleep. Woo-hoo. I think he's finally, he eats as much as I do, so I think he's finally doesn't need to be eating all night long. Anyway, he sleeps. Anything else you all want to know about Theo? I'd be happy to tell you.
So what are you working on now? What do you find yourself writing about now?
I'm writing I'm working on a collection of poems that are letters to people where I am seeking resolution through poem. So they're sort of my one-way conclusions of dialogue. Yes.
I'm curious how you got started. What brought you to poetry?
I lived in a community where there really wasn't. I just didn't see any way to express myself other than in secret on paper. And so that just became my way of trying to make sense of being a suburban teenager in a community I didn't relate to at all, and didn't understand there was a bigger world that I would ever find a place in, possibly. So that was kind of my way of being my own friend, I think, is what it came to eventually.
Were you always good with words and writing and that sort of
I was
thing,
always
or-
attracted to words and wanting to kind of make sense of my experiences in words. Yeah. And I've been at it a long time, so I got better slowly. I just recently found a collection of poems from high school, and it was just so painful. It had these wonderful, encouraging comments from my teacher, and I thought, bless his heart, you know. Those teachers just have to love us and all of our enthusiasm and let things blossom. Yes.
Well, who are your influences among the?
Gosh, so many of them are right here in this room. I mean, I feel, I sound like a broken record, but Portland is just the most incredible literary community. It's so welcoming and warm and supportive and inclusive, and people care about writing and care about each other, and I've really never experienced anything. I didn't think it could be possible, actually, to experience a writing community like this. So that's what's most interesting to me these days, is how do relationships with the people that we care about and that we are writing with, how do they all kind of weave the fabric together?
Well, if there aren't more
Thank you very
questions.
Thank you.
Sage will be here for a while.
I'll be here for a while.
Sides.
I forgot also, I just wanted to mention that Voice Catcher is a publication, a wonderful, wonderful community organized, community run, featuring Portland area women writers. I have had the privilege to be on the collective for the past couple of years. The book is back there if you're interested. I'd like to talk to you
And
about
there are
it.
some refreshments. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
thank you.